Alright, Chapter 15. Life Values Your Personal Compass. Chapter 15. Life Values Your Personal Compass. Awaken the Giant Within. Anthony Robbins. Alright, life values, your personal compass. Nothing splendid has ever been achieved except before by those who dared to believe something inside of them was superior in circumstance. Bruce Barton. Courage, determination, perseverance, dedication. Ross Perot conducted the tense briefing of the Dallas. He saw the qualities reflected in the face of the men he handpicked for an extraordinary rescue mission. Early 1979 civil unrest, anti-American hysteria rising to a fever pitching in Iran only a few days before Perot's corporate executive Tehran had been inexplicably jailed. Bail was set at $13 million. High-powered diplomatic negotiation failed. The result, Parrott decided that there's only one way to get this man out. He'd have to do it himself, calling upon expertise legendary Army Colonel Arthur Bill Simons. With his daring raid, Parrott quickly assembled the crack team of his top executives to pull off the jailbreak. He selected because they have all been in Tehran of the military experience. He called in his men Eagles to signify high flyers who he would initiate with a gun, got the job done, give the result, no excuses. The reward would be if they won, but the risk would be even greater if the mission was completely unauthorized, not only for the failure possibility, but so was death. What drove Ross Perot to muster all his source of resources to risk and defy odds. Clearly, his man who lives values courage, loyalty, love, commitment, and determination of all the values to give him an exponential care to strengthen over the will legendary. The same values of the force he drove them to build his his company. Electronic Data System Corporation. From $1,000 investment into an enterprise worth of billions of dollars, he rose to the top because of his capacity to evaluate the select right of men. He chose them based on a strict code of values. He knew that the right people, those who had high enough standards, all have to do give them a job to do, get out of their way. Nor would he have the ultimate test of the people he had selectively called upon with some of the finest resource for the rescue of the few members of the corporate family. The story of his mission and challenges that can be found in the book of the Wings of the Eagle suffice is to that, despite obstacles beyond compare, Parrott's heroic rescue mission succeeded and brought him his most valued asset, his people. A man's character is his guardian divinity, Hercules. Values guided on every decision, therefore, of the destiny, with know where the values lie by them, become the leaders of society, exemplified outstanding individuals throughout their nation, from a boardroom to classroom. For example, did you see the movie Stand and Deliver? It told the story of the maverick math teacher Jamie Escalante, who had been inspired by heroic strides. He made a transmitting of the students his passion for the learning. He got them associated with the nervous system deep to the level of the sense of pride in their capacity to master the things that were certainly that could never learn. His example of commitment translated with the young people the power of values he learned from them: discipline, confidence for the importance of the team, flexibility, power of the absolute determination. He didn't talk with the kids with Raro about what they should do with their lives. His living demonstration, new definition was possible. He not only got them to pass calculus placement tests under the numbers in numbers that everyone thought were impossible, but also got them to change their beliefs about who they were, and they were capable of consistently committed to holding themselves at a higher standard. It wasn't. If we wanted to spot deepest level of fulfillment, we achieve it in only one way: by doing what the two men have done, by deciding what of the value most in life, the high values are, and committing life to them every single day. Unfortunately, the actions are far too rare with today's society. Too often, people have no clear idea of what's important to them. The waffle in any of the issues world is a masquerade of to them. They never take stand with anything or anyone. If you and I are not clear about what the most important of our lives will truly stand for, then how can we expect to lay the foundation sense of self-esteem, much less to have the capacity to make effective decisions? If you ever found yourself in a situation where you have a tough time making a decision about it, The reason is that they weren't clear, but about what the values most of the situation. What must remember, all the decision making close comes down to the values of clarification. Most people are unclear about the most important in their life. The decision making becomes a form of internal torture. This is not true, but we've clearly defined the highest principles in their life. It wasn't tough with Ross Perot, who know what to do. His values dictated that the act on a personal compass to guide them through the situation fraught with the peril of the recently escalant left of the Los Angeles school system had been working into the moving to North Carolina, Northern California. Why he could no longer be with a part of the organization where he believed that there were no standards for the teacher's performance, who are mostly universally admired, respected in our culture, aren't those who have a solid grasp on their own values, people who only profess their standards but live by them. We all must respect who we take and stand for and what they believe, and even if we won't concur with the idea about right or what's wrong. This power individuals congruently led their lives with a philosophy, actions are one. Most often we recognize the unique state of the human condition as an individual integrity culturally. These people have come in many forms with the John Wales, Ross Perot's, and Bob Hope's, and Jerry Lewis's, and Martin Sheen's, and Ralph Nader's, and Norman Cousins, and Walter Cronkite's. Fact of the matter is that we're perceived as congruent with our values, with tremendous capacity for the influence for the culture. Do you remember the nearly cast of Walter Cronkite? Walter was one of the almost for the important days of her life during tragedy and triumph that John F. Kennedy was assassinated with Neil Armstrong first set on the moon. Walter was part of our family. We trusted him in implicity. At the beginning of the Vietnam War, he reported on it in a standard way with a direct view of our involvement with the visiting of Vietnam. His view with the war changed, but it was integrity and honesty required with rightly, wrongfully. He communicated with his disillusionment, regardless of whether you agreed with him or not, and the impact that may have with one of the final straws that caused the many of the middle America to begin questioning the war for the first time. Now it was just a few radical students protesting Vietnam, but one Uncle Walt. The conflict of Vietnam was truly values conflict with our culture, people, perceptions, or what was wrong, or right or wrong. We would make difference with the battle fought at home while the boys overseas put the blood and guts on the line, something knowing why, and some not knowing why. Inconsistently values among the leaders of the been one of the greatest source of the pain in our culture. Watergate certainly wounded many Americans, yet through it all the country has continued to grow and expand because there are individuals continually come forth, demonstrate what's possible, and hold us to the higher standard, whether the Bob Geldof function focusing on intention of the world, the famine in Africa, and Ed Roberts mobilized the political forces necessary to change quality of life and physically challenged. Every time a value is born, existence takes a new meaning, and every time someone dies, some part of the meaning passes away. Joseph Wood Crotch. Alright, we need to realize the direction of our life, the control of the magnetic pole of our life, that is the force in front of us, consistently leading us to make the decision, creating the direction, ultimate destination of our life. Is true not only for those individuals, but also for the company, the organization, of the nation in which we are pan. Clearly, value of the founding fathers had held most of the dear and shaped our nation's destiny with the values of the freedom, choice, quality, sense of the community, hard work, individually challenged, competition, prosperity, respect for those who have the strength to overcome great adversity, have the consistently sculpted experience of American life. Thus our joint destinies. These values have ceased to be an ever-expanding country that innovates and continually provides a vision for possible people of the world over. What a different set of national cultural views have shaped our country differently, you bet. What if the value held most of the forefathers was stability, unconformity? How would that have changed the face of the great land? China, for example, one of the highest values in the culture of all value of the group versus that of the individual. The idea of the individual needs must be subservient to the group and how it would shape the Chinese life differently with American life. Fact is, with our nation, there are constant shifts going on with the value of the culture as a whole. While there are certain foundation values, significant emotional events can create shifts in the individual. Therefore, companies, organizations, countries, and they make up. The change in Eastern Europe are clearly the most profound value shifts that have occurred in the world community in lifetimes. What happens to country individuals happens with the companies. IBM, an example of the corporation, the direction density was set up by its founder, Tom Watson. How he clearly defined what the company stood for, what was most important, all the people that experienced with regardless of the products or with the financial climates that would enter them into the future. He guided Big Blue being one of the world's largest, most successful companies. When we can learn from all this in personal and professional lives as well over the global front, we must be clear about what the most important in our life and decide what we live by with these values no matter what happens. The consistent most occurs regardless of whether the environment rewards us living by our standards or not. We must live with our principle even within the rain on our parade, even no one gives us the support we need. The only way for us to long-term happiness is to live with the highest ideal, to consistently act in accordance with what we believe the untrue is law about it. But we can do this and don't clearly know what the values are. But the biggest tragedy for the most people's life is that many people don't know what they want to have, but have no idea what they want to be. Getting things will nullify with only living and doing what you believe is the right thing. You give it a sense of the inner strength that we'll all deserve. Remember those values, whether they are over the compass or whether that is guiding you to the ultimate destiny. Creating a life path guided to make certain decisions, taking actions consistently, not using internal compass for the intelligent resolve of the frustration, disappointment, lack of fulfillment, nagging sense of that could be merely on only somehow something more different. On the other hand, the unbelievable power of living your values, a sense of certainty, inner peace, total congruency, the few people that you ever experience. If you don't know your true values, prepare for pain. The only way you can ever be happy and fulfilled for the long term is in accordance with our true value that don't tribute. If we don't, we sure have experienced intense pain. So often the people develop the habitual patterns, behavior to frustrate, cold, or could potentially destroy them. Smoking, drinking, overeating, abusing drugs, attempting to control to dominate others, watching hour upon hour of television, so on. What's the real problem with the behavior that we really result from frustration, anger for the emptiness people that feel that because they don't have a sense of fulfillment in their life, they're trying to distract themselves with empty feelings and filling the gap of the behavior that produces a quick fix change state. The behavior becomes a pattern with the people often focus and shame with the behavior that rather than dealing with the cause. They don't just drink the problem, they have the value problems. They often reason the drinking is to change with their emotional state because they don't like the feel of the moment over the moment. They don't know what's the most important to them in their life. The consolation is whether we do live with our highest standards, whenever we feel with meet with our values, we feel immense joy. We don't need to exceed food and drink. We do not put ourselves in super because of life that becomes such an incredible rich without these successes. Distracting ourselves with incredible heights would be taking sleeping pills on Christmas morning. Guess what? The challenge is always we already sleep when the essence is what we shape our lives was formed. We were children, but they didn't understand the importance of having a clear sense of value. With adults dealing with the pressure of life, we're already distracted to the point where we can direct formation of our values and most reiterate that every decision is guided by these values. In most cases, we didn't set them up. If I asked you to make a list of the top 10 values right with a precise order of importance, I'll be betting that at least one of them would be that only 1 in 10,000 could do it. And the voidoid of a percent would have attended the date with Destiny seminar. But if you don't have the answer to this question, how can you make the clear decision? All you can make the choice that you know that the long-term will, but the deepest emotional needs, hard to hit target when you know what is knowing your values is critical being able to live them. Anytime you have difficulty making an important decision, you can be sure that is the result of being unclear with your values. If we're asked to move with a family across the country within connection with a new job and knew that there was some risk involved with that, compensation for a better job would be made more interesting. What would it be? What would it do? And how would the answer for the depending entirely on the most important personal growth and security, adventure, or comfort? By the way, that determines whether the value of adventure more than comfort. The values come from the mixed bag of experience, lifelong conditioning through punishment and reward. Your parents congratulated and supported you when you doing things that agree with their values. When you clash with their values, you punish them either physically or verbally through a pain of being ignored. Your teachers encouraged and applauded you when you do things that they both agreed with, and add similar forms of punishment when the violator of the deepest held views. The cycle was perpetuated for the friends and employers, your model values of the heroes, and maybe your anti-heroes as well. Today, new economic factors come into play with the families having the both of the parents working outside of their home. There's no traditional role for the model of value within the home, school, churches, unless appetizing side of the TV always stepped in to fill the gap. Indeed, TV is one of the most convenient babysitters of the average person not watching television. The average person now watching television 7 hours a day. I'm suggesting that the traditional family structure is only way to raise children with the strong values. Of course not. I suggest that teaching our children philosophy of life and being strong role models by knowing our values and living by them. What are values? To value something means with the place of importance upon anything that you could do to be called with the value within this chapter. That's specifically referring to the life of the value of those things that are most important to you in your life, with the kind of value, with the two type of the ends of the means that I ask if you do with the most value. Your mighty answer for the love, family, money, and of the love is the end where you'll be pursuing. In other words, emotional states your desire. Conversely, family with the money are merely mean values in order. They are simply a way of the trigger of the emotional states you really desire. If I ask you, what does your family give? What does family give you? You might say, love, security, and happiness. What would be the truth? What you tamely value that ends with your after love, security, and happiness. Similar with the money, I could ask you, what does money really mean to you? What it gives you, might say, freedom and the impact of the ability to contribute to the sense of security. Again, you see what the money is merely means to achieve the much deeper set of value, with the set of emotions you can desire to experience with a consistent basis of your life. The challenge in life with most people are not clear with the difference between the means and the ends of value, therefore experiencing a lot of pain. So often the people are too busy pursuing means of value that don't achieve the true desire of the end of the value. The end values are those that will fulfill and make you life rich, rewarding. One of the biggest challenges I see with the people that keep setting goals without knowing the true value in life, therefore they end up achieving their goals and saying is all there is. For example, let's say the woman's high values are caring and contributing. They choose to become an attorney because she once met a lawyer who really impressed her as being able to make a difference in helping people through this work. As time goes on, she caught up with the whirlwind of practicing law and aspired to become a partner in her firm. As she pursues the position here, her work takes an entirely different focus. She begins with a dominate with the run firm, but becomes one of the most successful women that she knows. Yet she feels unhappy because she no longer has any contact with clients. Her position created a differential relationship with her peers and spends all her time meetings and ironing out protocol and procedures. She achieved her goals, has been missed out on life, the desire have ever been fallen with a trap pursuing. This means as there were the end and you were after, and this means as they were the end you were after. In order to be truly happy, you must know the difference and be able to pursue the end of itself, the moving towards values. While it's absolutely true that you and I can't slowly motivated with the toward pleasurable, the emotional state of the true value of something of notions more than the other. For example, the emotional state value most in life, were the emotions you think you give the most pleasure of love, success, freedom, intimacy, adventure, security. A pleasurable state of the value most moving towards values because they are. Emotional states will do the most to attain, while some of the feelings are most important for you to experience in your life on a consistent basis. We answer the questions at my seminar. Audience invariably respond with words like love, success, freedom, intimacy, security, adventure, power, passion, comfort, and health. It's certainly true the probable value of these emotions. They are important for you to feel, but it wouldn't fair to say that you don't value them all equally. Obviously, there are some emotional states that you don't do more than achieve than others. In truth, we all have hierarchy of values. Each person who looks at the list, some of the emotional states are being more important than others in the hierarchy. The value of controlling the way to make a decision at each moment. That some of the people the value with the comfort, with the overpassing, freedom over security, intimacy over the success. Take a moment right now to discover the list of these emotional values. Simply rewrite the list in order, importance being one of the emotional, out of the whole of the importance. 10 being the least important. Please take a moment now and fill in with the blanks in your order of importance. Be concerned with which of your character, with your reputation, everything, because the character is what you really are, while repetition is merely what others think you are. Once again, that was John Wooden. Be concerned with your character than your be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think you are. John Wooden. So what do you learn by doing this rank? If I was sitting next to you, that would probably give you the quality of the feedback. For example, I know that a lot about what the number one value was freedom, valued by passion, adventure, for the power. But I know you're going to make the different decision with someone whose top value is security, comfort, with an intimacy and health. You think the person who with the number one value is adventure makes the decision the same way that someone with the number one value with security. You think these people that would drive the same kind of car, that takes the same kind of vacation, seek over the same profession, far from it. Remember, whatever your values are, with the effect of the direction of your life, with the learn, with the reality, with life, with experience, with a certain emotion, with the guts, with the give, with more pleasure than others. For example, some people have learned that the way of the most pleasurable emotions in life that they have, the sense of control, the pursuit with an incredible vigor, become the dominant focus for all of their actions, and then shape that will have with the relationship, with what will they do within those relationships, how will they live. It all causes them, as you can imagine, to feel quite uncomfortable in any environment would they not change. And conversely, some of the people think pain to the idea of control, but they want more than anything else, with the sense of the freedom and adventure, but they're more decision completely different. Others are in the same level of the pressure for the different emotion, with the contribution, with the values called the person constantly asks, what can I give, how can I make the difference? This would be to certainly send them in a different direction, with someone with the highest value was control. Once you know what your values are, you can clearly understand what you're headed with the direction in these consistent spaces. Also, by seeing hierarchy of your values, you can see why sometimes you find it difficult making decisions, whether by conflicts in your life, with, for example, the person number one, freedom, and the number two, intimacy. These two incompatible values are so closely ranked that often the person will have challenges. I remember a man counseled at one time with a consistently feeling that he was push-pull, consistently saw autonomy. But was he achieved at it? He felt alone with a craved intimacy. He also pursued with an intimacy. He became fearful that he would lose his freedom. He sabotaged the relationship, one with a particular relationship, with a continually ongoing off again, on again, off again, while cycled between those two values. After I hope with the make with a simple dream, with a hierarchy with his value, with a relationship, with his life, with instantly change, with shifting priorities, produce power. Knowing your own values helps you to get more with the clarity as what you want, what you do, and how you can live more consistently. By knowing the values other than equally important, make it as valuable to know the values of someone you're in the relationship with somebody you're business with. Knowing a person's values gives you a fix on their compass, but allows you to have insight with the decision making. Knowing that their own hierarchy is absolutely critical, because of the top values are those that are going to bring you the most for the happiness. Of course, you would really want to do is set up so that you're meeting all of the values every day. If you don't, you're experiencing what seems an inexplicable feeling of emptiness or unhappiness. My daughter Jolie lives an incredible rich life with the highest, her highest values are almost always met. She always is also a wonderful actress, dancer, and singer. With at age 16, she auditioned to perform at Disneyland, something she knew that would fill with her value with accomplishment, and she succeeded. Incredibly, she beat out 700 other girls to win the part with a fabled amusement park with electric light parade. And initially, Jolie was ecstatic when we all went along with our friends. We were all so delighted and proud of her, and we would frequently drive up on the weekends to see her perform. Her schedule, however, were extremely taxing. Julie had to perform every weeknight as well as weekends. Her school team wasn't over for the summer yet, so she had to drive from San Diego to Orange County every evening in rush hour traffic, rehearse and perform the several hours, then drive back when I'm home in the wee hours of the night. With the church, you could get up early again the next morning in time for school. As you can imagine, the daily commute and long hours soon turned with experience into a grueling ordeal, not to mention with extremely heavy costume she had to wear with her back. Even worse, however, the Jolie's perspective was the fact that her demanding schedule cut drastically into her personal life that prevented her from spending any time with her family and her friends. That began to know that wandering about with a series of very unsuccessful emotional states. She would cry at the top of the drop of the hat, began to complain about things consistent behavior that this was totally unlike Jolie. Final straw was that the whole family was preparing to go to Hawaii for a 3-week certification program. Everyone except Jolie had to stay home in order to continue the work at Disneyland. One morning, she hit the threshold and came into tears with undecided and confused. She felt so frustrated, so unhappy, unfulfilled yet. If she had achieved what seemed to be the unbelievable goal for only 6 months of early Disneyland had to become painful for her. Why? Because it became an obstacle to her ability to spend time with all those she loved. The most blessed that Jolie always had felt at the time. She spent certification when she participated as a trainer, helped her to grow more virtually than anything else in her life. Many of our friends from around the country attended the program each year, but the end with Disneyland was beginning to feel frustrating to hear because she literally didn't feel like she was spending growing there at all. She was feeling pain that she decided to come off with the certification because she didn't want to be a quitter, but in pain if she continued to work with Disneyland because it wouldn't mean she'd miss out things that seemed to be important to her. We sat down together so I could help her take a close look at the top 4 values in her life. They turned out to be love, health, and vibrancy, with the growth and accomplishment. By turning her values, I knew that I could help her with the clarity that she needed to make with the decision would be right for her. So I asked her, what did the working line Disneyland give you? What was important about working with Disneyland? She told me she was originally excited about it, but she saw as an opportunity to make new friends, receive the recognition for her work, and have fun experiencing a tremendous sense of accomplishment. At this point, though, she was feeling so very much accomplishment, wasn't feeling very much accomplishment at all, because she didn't feel like she was growing anymore, and she knew that there was other things she could doing than that would accelerate her career more rapidly. She also said, I'm burning myself into the ground, I'm not healthy, I miss being the family tremendously. I asked her what would be making a change in the area of the life mean, but if you left Disneyland and spent home in time with them, went to Hawaii with them, what would that give you? So they immediately brightened and smiled. She said, well, I get to be with you guys, and I could have some time with my boyfriend, I would feel free again, I could get some of the rest, start exercising to get my body back in shape. I'd keep my 4.0 grade point average in school. I could find other ways to grow and achieve. I'd be happy. Her answer to what to do with the plainly in front of her, and the source of the unhappiness was also clear, but she started working at Disneyland. She was fulfilling her top 3 values that she loved and very healthy and fit, and she felt like she was growing. She began to pursue the next value with a relentless accomplishment. But in doing so, she created an environment where she achieved but missed out on the top 3 values. There is such a common experience that we need to realize with the most accomplishment, with the high value, with the first, with the utmost priority, with the remember the arrows, we have the way to accomplishment all of our values, and simultaneously, we need to make certain we don't settle with anything less. Or there's such common experience we all need to realize with the accomplishment, with the highest value, with the first. There's our utmost priority. Remember, there's always a way to accomplish all our values. Simultaneously, we need to make certain that we don't settle for anything less. There still was one final obstacle, Joel's decision. She linked pain with leaving the Disneyland. One thing she avoided most of her life was quitting. Certainly had to contribute to this view, since I believe that nothing is ever achieved by those who give it up whenever it gets tough. So she saw leaving her work at Disneyland as giving up. I assured her making the decision live and congruent with your values is not quitting, nor is foolishly consisting of a virtue. It would be the first person to ensure that she continue. If I thought she was just giving up because of the work was too hard, but that was not the case, and I offered her the opportunity to transition into the gift for someone else. And I said, Jolie, can you imagine how you'd feel if you were the first runner-up, and all of a sudden the winner stepped down, and now you had a chance to be the parade? Why don't you give the gift to someone else? Because the part of the Jolie definition of love and contribution immediately tapped into the highest value. Stopped linking pain and the quitting, and now associated pleasure to her decision values, lessons, and ones she never forgotten. And the most exciting thing is she ever found in a new way to meet all the values and began to move them more precisely the direction of their goals. She only began to feel more fun and happiness, and shortly thereafter she got her first job at San Diego Starlight Theater production. Heart lessons in pain. Just after these emotions, the desire to experience with the because of the pleasurable, that's why they were always moving toward them. That we also have a list of emotions that almost do anything to move it away from. Very early in my career, I was just beginning with the build of the first company, experiencing with a tremendous frustration of being with the road, with trying to run business simultaneously. At the one point, it appeared with the purpose representing of me had not been completely honest. When you deal as I have with the hundreds of thousands of people, literally thousands of the business arrangements of the laws of the average said that the few will attempt to take advantage of you. Unfortunately, there's one that tend to stick out within my minds rather than hundreds and even thousands of the business relations that have far surpassed our expectation result of one such painful situation. I sought out a new CEO, a man that I thought could really run my company and arm me with a new tool for being able to elicit someone else's values. I asked each of the potential candidates what's important in your life, and some of them said things like success and accomplishment being the best. But one of the men used the magic word. He said honesty. I didn't just take his word his word. I checked him out. Several people I had worked with. They are confirmed that he would be the honest as the day was long, and in fact. And at this time, he set aside his own needs, and there was a question of integrity. I thought this is the kind of man that I was representing me. He did a fine job. Soon then, it became to me clear that we needed additional associates in order to run rapidly expanding business. Some of them who had additional skills. My CEO recommended someone he thought could become his partner, and they could jointly run my organization. This sounds great to me. I met this man, whom I call Mr. Smith. Names that had been changed to protect the not so innocent, and he'd been favored as a representation of the demonstrated that for me how he could use all of the skills that developed throughout the years to take my company to the next level. He could free up my time and allow me to do even larger seminars, impact with even more people without having to live on the road. At the time, I was spending about 150 days a year of the way from home, conducting my seminars. Additionally, he didn't want to be paid until the people produced the result. It sounded almost too good to be true, and I agreed to the arrangement, and Mr. Smith and my CEO would run my company. A year and a half later, I woke up to discover that it was too good to be true. Yes, my seminars had gotten bigger, but now I was on the road almost 270 days a year. My skill impact had grown, and I have been helped more people than ever before, but I suddenly informed that I was at $758,000 in debt, and after I have given them more than I ever had in the entire life, there could possibly be management is everything, but with my companies within ourselves, I clearly did not have the right managers. But worse, Mr. Smith had over an 18-month period of the time misappropriated more than $250,000 from the office for our co-workers, and he had a new house, a new car, and he assumed that he had gotten them from his other businesses. Boy, I was in for a surprise to say that I was angry with the devastated with the experience with the transformational vocabulary galore. And then see with my feeling with the metaphors I used at the time were like, if I feel stabbed in the back, he tried to murder my firstborn, how with emotional intensity. However, the first thing perplexed me the most of how the CEO could stand but not warn me of all the things that was happening. He was aware what was going on. This was because I began to realize that people just don't pursue pleasure. They clearly assume always move away from pain. My own CIO tried to tell me that he was concerned about his partner. He came to me after I had been on the road for 3 straight months. On the first day home, he approached me to tell me that he had countless questions about Mr. Smith's integrity. Immediately became concerned. Asked him and why when moved to our new office. Really looked at the biggest office. This was so pretty. I had gotten extremely angry and said, "Listen, you brought him into the business. You deal with him yourself personally." And I stormed off. I should have realized the day that I have given the man pain with the trying to give me information with the stress state without fail with the value with the deeper meaning of what was going on. As if it were bad enough, my own CEO approached me again to give me a similar feedback, and I told him that he was not being totally honest by talking to me instead of Mr. Smith. I marched into his associate's office and said, "Hey, he's telling me all these things about you, and you guys work this out." Can you imagine the pain he got from Mr. Smith? As I look back on my experience now, I can see clearly why he didn't tell me the truth of telling me the truth that he brought someone in the economy business with a misappropriated more than $250,000 seemed to him in the short term to be much more painful than just putting off trying to find some other way to deal with it. Eventually, in fact, I look back on all the upsets I ever had with the CEO, invariably they all came down to times where they didn't do things he needed simply because they wanted to avoid feeling of the confrontation. This is ultimate pain for him. See, the honesty was important to him, and avoiding the confrontation was more important. Simply, if it did not communicate to me, rationalize that he was being the honest because of the after all, I never asked him, and if Mr. Smith was taking money, if I had, he would have told me. As angry as the situation made me, as painful as it was financially and emotionally, it provided me with one of the most valuable lessons of my life because it gave me one of the final pieces of the puzzle of the understanding human behavior. Understanding the twin force of the pain and pleasure has helped me out, not only positively influence my life, myself, and my family, but people around me, the world, with great precision. Moving away from values. You must remember that any time without making a decision about what to do with the brain evaluates whether the action can be possibly lead to the pleasure or painful states. Your brain is constantly juggling and weighing your alternative to see whether the impact of the baby some of your value hierarchy. An example that I asked you for the go sky with the number one emotion you try to avoid at all called the sense of fear. Pretty obvious that you're not going to take action, are you? If, however, the number one value would be avoid at all costs the feeling rejection, you believe that might reject you if you did not go. You may decide to jump off of the plane in spite of your fear of the relative of the levels of the pain, and will associate a certain emotion and all the fact with our decision. Or some of the emotions are the most important to avoid the experience with a consistent basis. But often I ask people the question in seminars. They come up with a list such as the following: rejection, anger, frustration, loneliness, depression, failure, with humiliation, guilt. Again, if it would be fair to say that these emotions stay with likely avoid having the feeling, of course, but they become the painful, wouldn't easy be the truth to say that which would avoid the feeling all of these emotions. Some of the more painful than others. In fact, with the hierarchy of the moving away from the values as well, with the value of the above list, would you do the most to avoid the feeling of the rejection, depression, humiliation? Answer for the question will determine behavior in almost any environment. To take a moment before we go any further, write a list of out in all blanks, ranking them from an emotional state you must avoid having to feel. Those you do at least avoid having to feel. I hope we can build a university or a football team can be proud of. University of Oklahoma. As you look at the list for the what does it tell you with the example you put with the top of your list for the emotion you would do most of avoid healing, feeling of humiliation that you see with how you would consistently avoid entering the situation which might be juggled harshly. If loneliness emotion you want to avoid the most for the drive you for the nurturing per person, reaching out with the others and try to give you on a regular basis so that they want to be with you, so that they are surrounded by more grateful friends. So that you'll be surrounded by many grateful friends. The source of self-sabotage values conflicts. Now let's look at the dynamics created by our own values hierarchy. If you select with success, for example, that you with the top move with the total with the value rejection at the top of the moving away from the value, do you see when the possible change of the hierarchy might create within your life? I'm here to tell you that the person who's trying to achieve the pleasure of success without experiencing the pain of the rejection will never succeed in the long term. In this, the fact that the person will sabotage himself before he ever truly succeeds on the major scale. How can he make such claim? Remember the basic organization principle we've talked about so often here. People will do more to avoid pain than they will go to obtain pleasure. The truly going to succeed at the highest level in life, you don't have to have the willing to risk rejection. Doesn't have to be willing to experience in it. It isn't true that even with the honest, sincere person gives you all to others every day, there's still people that will misinterpret your actions or judge you even without having met you. Whether you want to be a writer, singer, speaker, for the business person with the potential rejection ever present with the sense your brain inherently knows that in order to succeed, you have to risk rejection, and if you already decide with the feelings of the rejection, ultimate level of the pains, it makes a decision with the pleasure success if not worthy of the price and will likely cause the sabotage for the behavior before they ever get in the position. So if I say with the people that you strive to forward on materially pull back at the last minute with the others, they'll say do things for the sabotage for personal, emotional, physical success. They're pursuing an invariable with the reason that they have the major values conflict the part of their brain is saying go for it, while the other part pan is saying if you do what you're going to get too much pain, so they are 2 steps forward and 1 step back. During the 1988 election year, I used to call the principle of the Gary Hart syndrome. He was a nice guy who truly see with a care passionately about people in society who valued conflict that played out with all the sea. Was Gary Hyatt a horrible guy? I doubt it. I was just someone who had the value of the massive conflict. He grew up in a church that he taught him with a committing. He grew up in a church that he taught him he was committing a sin if he'd have ever danced. Simultaneously exposed the role of the model like Warren G. Betty. These conflicting desires obviously played a role with the political downfall. Do you think of a person intelligent as Gary Hart clearly seemed to be would tell the media? If you got a question about me, follow me, and then immediately afterward to go to visit the mistress. Clearly, this was his brain sway of getting out of the being position where he had to play with the roles of the other of his own. You can call this a pop psychology if you want, but doesn't make sense if they are being pulled in two different directions. You'll not be able to serve both masters yet. Something has to give, whatever necessary, consciously and unconsciously, to keep ourselves within the head things within our most intense level of pain. We've all seen people in public eye who ever explain the pain or value of the conflict rather than judgmental. We need to verify that each of these value the conflict with ourselves with a why, and again, simply because they never said that the system of the ourselves that we allow with the environmental shape us, but we can begin to change this now. How? Simply by taking 2 steps. Step 1, with the gain awareness of your current value, that you understand why you do what you do. What are emotional states of the moving toward? What are the states that you're moving away from? By reviewing the list side by side, that you'll be able to have an understanding of the force for the creating of the present future. Step 2, you can take a minute, making conscious decision about the values you want to live within in your order to the shape of the quality of the life of the density truly you desire and deserves. How to discover your current values. So let's get started. We've done with the sum of the sample value list, a ranking list that I gave you. You will need to start fresh with your own list. All I have is you to discover the values and answer the simple question: what is most important to me in life? With brainstorming the answer for the question, and peace of mind, impact, love, with an output with the values in order from the most important to least important. Take a moment to do this. What is the most important to me? I feel I created my list of the moving toward value with which I came up with in order to which they occurred. My old list of moving toward passion, love, freedom, contribution, being able to grow with achievement, accomplishment, happiness, fun, health, and creativity. As I looked at my list, I understand that what I was doing was what I was doing. I was such an intense individual, and anybody's description was both of my approach. I saw that as my passion, my love for my life, family, and friends. What I shared with the seminars was clear. The desire was to free people. That I figured out that I free individuals around me, contributed to them, and I feel that I was able to do almost anything. I grew up with would eventually have the fun and health, creativity, knowing my values, a list that I've been staying on the track over the life consistently with the most important for me. For the years I felt with a greater sense of the congruency in my life, but I was soon making another distinction that would transform the quality of my life forever. Changing your values and changing your life. After my experience with the famous Mr. Smith, I went to Fiji with a getaway for all of the needs of the balance myself emotionally. Gained some perspective, clarity of the situation. Most importantly, I had to decide what was going on with what I was going to turn things around. The first night I was there before I went to sleep, and I asked myself a very important question. Instead of why do all of this what happened to me, but I began to ask the better question. What source of all of the human behavior that makes people to do what they do? When I woke up the following morning, 8 a.m., and I was out in the frenzy idea with the pouring through me, I grabbed my journal and began to write with continuously sitting on the main cabana. People walked in and out throughout the day as I wrote non-stop from 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and my arm was sore. My fingers were numb and I wasn't just thinking calmly and writing. The ideas were literally exploding through me with an ensemble of ideas. I designed the destiny technologies and a good portion of the science of the neural associated with the condition. When I went back to review my notes, however, I couldn't read a word, for the ideas and feelings were anchored within me, and I immediately realized the potency of what I created, a program that could help the person redesign the life priorities of the nervous system, literally redirect the process of how the people to make all the decisions about how they think, how they feel, and what do they virtually every area of their life. I began to thinking about what would happen instead of just teaching people what the values were, with clarifying with them. I actually got the people who constantly select, redirect the order and content of the value with a hierarchy system. When I took someone on with whose number one value was security and the number 115 value whose number 15 value was adventure. I switched to them in the order, not intellectually, but so that adventure became the new highest sport of the nervous system. When I kind of changed to think that might make someone's life, the minor one or major one, the answer is obvious. By doing something literally change the way people think, feels, behaves, virtually every area of their life that I could imagine for the more profound shift that a human being could be command and make. In essence, this would be the kind of change that have been described throughout the history of conversion of Saul to Paul, if you will, the writing of the things of the person I hated the most becoming the things that they loved the most, vice versa. Could this really be done? I decided that the best person on the test for this of course, was myself. I began to look at my value list. As I first saw with my value, the greater I love with my values. After all, this is who I am. But I had to keep reminding myself that they are not our values, which are more than our values. These values were not a result of intelligent choices and a master plan. What I had merely accomplished until then, I would discover them what priorities were conditioned in my life. And I had consciously chosen to live within the system of the pain and pleasure that had been programmed into me. But if I were to really design my own life, I would be going to create a set of values that would shape the ultimate destiny one desired and what they need to be. We've made thee neither of heaven nor of earth. We have made thee neither of heaven nor of earth, neither mortal nor immortal. So with the freedom of choice, and with honor as thou maker, molder of thyself, that I might fashion thyself in whatsoever shape thou shalt prefer. Thou shalt have the power out of the soul's judgment to be reborn into higher forms which are divine. God's speech to Adam from Pico del Mirando's oration of the dignity of man. I felt unbelievably inspired at the beginning and realized that in this moment I was able to make the decision that would change the direction of my life wherever it began to lay. And my values, asked the question, what do my values need in order to create my ultimate destiny, in order to be the best person I could possibly be, in order to have the largest impact of my lifetime? I thought the values I have right now were helping me, but then I thought, what are the values would I need to have? I began to realize that one of the things wasn't one of most list was intelligence. Certainly I was an intelligent person, but I have been made with intelligent high priority as being with a passion. In fact, with my passion, I have been pretty stupid choices, including who my CEO was going to be. I began to realize unless I've been for the intelligent with the conscious priority of the nervous system, that unless I learned to make it a moment with the two advances, or two in advance with the conscious value with the consequences of the decision making, I would continuously fall to achieve the deepest desire that would know but the question of intelligence needed to be with the place high on the list. Then I discovered the additional series of value that added with the desire of what they needed to be in play with my hierarchy. Then I asked the question I never asked before, what value should I eliminate from my list in order to achieve my ultimate destiny? I began to realize that by constantly focusing on how to be free with missing out of the freedom I already had, I realized there was no way I could be any more free than I was in this moment. Maybe the feelings wouldn't be different if I ever lived in the country where the choices don't exist for me. There's no way to have any more freedom than I have today, so I decided to drop it from my list, not to make it an issue anymore. It was amazing to have freedom. I felt getting freed from all this list. Next, I began to evaluate each individually as its true merit. I began to ask, what benefit do I am going to have the value of the position in hierarchy? I'd like to first have the passion and ask, what benefit do I get from having the passion here? I thought it gives me joy and excitement and energy with the power to impact people in a positive way. It makes me life juicy. Then I asked the question, what that kind of scared me from them. I never asked before, what could have passion at the top of my list cost me? In the moment the answer became obvious, I had just recently returned with a conducting seminar in Germany, and for the first time in years I had felt unbelievably ill. Health was always on my value list. It was important, but it wasn't very high upon the list. By the way, if you have anything on your values list you think is important, because there are hundreds of things you could have then on the list that aren't, but idealism and the health of the eat rather than wasn't exercising. I certainly wasn't getting enough rest. Finally, my body was giving out under constant demands on limited energy. I began to remember that in the day I felt like that I had no health. I pushed myself to did seminars in spite of all, but I didn't feel passionate. I didn't feel loving. I didn't feel like I could have an impact. I began to realize having a passion is the highest value on my list. It could cause me to burn out and therefore potentially cost me very destiny I was pursuing. Finally, I asked the question, in what order do my values need to be achieving my ultimate destiny, but not what's important to me, but what do they need to be? As I began to do this process, my list began to evolve until like this: health, vitality, love, warmth, intelligence, cheerfulness, honesty, passion, gratefulness, fun, happiness, making a difference, learning to grow, achieving and being the best, investing, contribution, creativity. These shifts may look as subtle to you, but they were profound with emotional impact upon me. Just with creating with a new list of the priorities created with the sum of the intense fear strategy struggled, the probably with the most difficult one was changing the order because I had been achievement and happiness. If you recall with the previous list, I felt passion, love, freedom, contribution, being able to grow with achievement and lower priority with feeling happy. I began to think of what would happen if I made happiness a priority. What would happen if I made higher priority than achieving the quiet, happy honesty with another question that had been created in fear? I thought it was easy for me to feel that happy. Maybe that I'd lose my drive. Maybe I won't want to achieve. Maybe I won't want to have the same impact. Maybe I won't contribute to as much as people. After all, I linked to my identity to me, my capacity of the passionately making a difference. It took me almost 2 hours to make a decision to go for the gusto and to decide to make myself happy. And how ridiculous, but I can tell you, having worked with tens of thousands of people on the day of destiny, from the majority of attendees we consider the achievers, this is one of the biggest fears they have. They generally fear that they will lose their power or drive, and they're feeling happy first. And if they feel happy first. I'm here to tell you what happened in my life instead of achieving to be happy. I began when I happily achieved. The difference in quality of my life is profound beyond verbal description. It isn't lose my drive and quit. Conversely, I felt so good and I wanted to do even more. When my list was complete, I felt emotional. I could never ever remember the feeling previously. A sense of calm, sense of certainty I have ever experienced before, because I knew that every part of me was being pulled in the direction of my dreams. It was no longer a tug of war with myself. I was no longer striving constantly for freedom. I could have the more intimacy, love, feel even more free, but I would happily achieve it now with a healthy and vital and intelligent, with the decision changing my life with the priorities. I could immediately feel the change in physical body. I also began to realize that there were certain emotional states so that I must have to avoid indulging in if I was going to be saved. One of the clearly was worried with a foul emotional, physical fate, physically racked. The pain of trying to figure out how I was going to keep my company going, keeping the doors open. At the time, I believed that I was worried. Maybe that I had been more motivated. Whatever that was to worry made me less resourceful. But it's that I couldn't worry anymore. I could have, but it doesn't make concern more important. I could focus on taking the actions that would make things work. And once I've decided to worry about the destroy my destiny, we're going to avoid experiencing it at all costs. And clearly, this became an emotional, too painful to indulge. I began to construct a moving away from itself. I then flew back to the United States, having to design my own destiny. Boys were my friends, associates for surprise. The one first day back in the office, the people started approaching me to ask, "What's happening to you? You seem you look so relaxed." I began to unload the entire new technology for the hours at a time in each individual until I finally realized I needed to take it, refine it, put it into a seminar. This is how the destiny was born. I wrote the book out with my desire to spread the destiny with an neuroassociational conditioning technology to as many people as possible. So I hope you use it now. Remember, we can design who we become. Give me beauty in the inward soul, make me outward the inward man to be. Inward man, be at one. Alright, so how can you take control of the third element of the master system known as values? Take with the following step with the two simple of one, find out will your current values, rank them in order of importance. This will give you the insight with the want to experiment with the most moving toward values, what you want to avoid in most of your life. If you move away from the values, if the giving you understand what do you want, what you to do, what do you offer the opportunity for the consistently agreeing with the more pressure for their life. Understand what the plain pleasure system already built within you. If you're willing to take the bull by the horns, you have the opportunity to redirect with the destiny. Ask yourself with a new question: what do my values need to be in order to achieve the destiny I desire to deserve? Brainstorm how to live, put them in order, see what the values you might get rid of, which values you might add, in order with the great quality of the life that I truly want. You may be wondering, what the heck is my destiny anyway? With the troubling over go back with the chapter 12, if you ask for the type of the person you have to be in order to achieve all of that, in order to value that person, what would the value would need to be, what the values would need to be added and eliminated. For example, how would your capacity to deal with the frustration, with the rejection, be effective with the deciding place, with the courage high upon moving toward a value list of the might be an impact with the playfulness for the high priority, maybe to enable you to have the more fun and the possibility enjoy all experiences as they come. Grow the closer to the children, maybe to do more than just a provider. So they have accomplished creating your new list of values. Isn't just a bunch of words on a piece of paper. The answer is you have to, don't condition yourself and give you the new compass. If you do, however, it will become the solid foundation on every decision you will make. It is difficult to give you a book, a full range of additional tools that you use in the seminars, but I let you remind you of the power of leverage. Many people who attend Date with Destiny post their values prominently at work, home, and anywhere they will be seen by people who hold themselves with a new and higher standard. So use the same kind of leverage and strength with every commitment with a new value for the next time they find yourself with yelling at the kids. Maybe someone who loves you will walk and remind you, isn't compassion number one on your list? I touch the future I teach, anonymous. I touch the future I teach. Watching people take control of the hierarchy of the date with the destiny rewarding become with a huge contrast between them alike. They're like Friday morning blue become on the Sunday night. A transformational curve of the magic cap of the remembered one man that dragged by his wife through the program. They didn't want to be there. They started talking all about values, the possibility of making change within this area. He insisted I don't need to have changed any of my values. And the number one value of the way was freedom. He balked and being forced to change anything in his life that he didn't want to become in control. Issue with the steadily fast refused to make any changes. Finally, I said to him, I know you don't have to make any changes. I know that you are free. So. Sure, you're free to add new few values. What would be some of the values that might be useful to add in order to improve the quality of your life that maybe even impact your ultimate destiny? After several moments of thought, he said, well, maybe the flexibility, but with a good one to add, and the audience cracked up. That's great. And I said, well, what would you put flexibility on your list? He started at the bottom and moved up the ending of the being number 4 on his list. The moment on the man decided that indeed with the right to play for his value. Another participant with a chiropractor was sitting behind them and suddenly piped up, did you see that? It was obvious that several of the other people in the room had also noticed that the man's physiology has literally begun to change before your eyes as he adopted flexibility in his value system. His whole posture seemed to loosen up to become more relaxed. He stood in the chair differently and seemed to be breathing with a lot more freedom for expression, change of the muscle of the face, with the release of their tension, with the flexibility of the new proportion. His nervous system obviously gotten into this message. Then I asked, are there any other values that you might want to add to your list? And the man thought with a moment of maybe the forgiveness with a question in his voice. Again, the group broke out laughing. This man who had started without bristling with a hostility tension has making a 100-degree shift. He's figured out where to put the forgiveness and the value of the hierarchy. It's gratifying to see with the further the change that took place with this meaning with the breathing. Facial muscles and gestures throughout the rest of the weekend of the week were made with the dramatic changes that had been wrought in the two simple addition of the values he added. People with a more softness in the voice. His face seemed to open with a more expression. They really seemed to connect with the people in ways that he hadn't before. And now, 3 years later, the freedom is not even on the list, and the intimacy between his life with the boys he expanded mercilessly. We are what we repeatedly do, Aristotle. Life is, always has a way of testing with a commitment. Our value with my test game, with the supporting, with the playing, with the let. Lo and behold, there stood the illustrious Mr. Smith. I felt with the angry and honest honesty, with the well up and silent, with the intensity I had an experience with it over 2 years, primarily because I hadn't seen him. He scurried out of the plane and seated himself in the rear. I sat on my seat with knowing that he was behind me. Questions raced through my head. What should I do? Whether should I confront? Should I just walk up with him the next time? Next to him, sitting there and stare at him and making them up with a squirm. I'm not proud of these questions, but since honesty was one of my highest values, I give them to you straight. Giving it straight to you. In a moment, though, with my actions were guided to my values. That when I opened my notebook to write, something down there was my values hierarchy placed at the front of my book, and the top of it said what is most important to be in life: with a loving, warm home, and intelligent. Being cheerful, honest, and passionate, grateful about having fun, but making a difference. Well, as you can imagine, the state changed periodically. Obviously, my pattern had been broken. Reminder of really who really I am and what I'm really about, with staring me in the face, what we can do because of the obviously. When people landed, I approached with him, sincerity, warmth, and told him with a while, with no meaning that I appreciate, approve of his past behavior, that this silence no longer had hold a ferocious level of resentment toward him. I had actually wished him well, but the last memory I was hit with his stunned face as I turned and walked away. Wow, what an emotional hit, even with the stressful environment I lived with, but what I believed was right. Nothing in the life can match for the fulfillment, but nothing you've done with it, truly believe it in this right thing. Give yourself the gift of taking hold of the force of the shape of the destiny, that make certain that you take the time to do exercise, that clarify with the priorities of your life, with the possible have the value of not feel, but living them. You have the great system of the value that gives yourself the magnificent direction, but still unhappy unless you understand the power of 16 rules. If you're not happy, here's why.